Hello, and welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds. Today, I want to talk about how to magic, how to build a magic system that will entice the consumers of your world to consume more, a magic system that will draw them in and make them believe in what is going on in your world. So how I'm going to do that is first I'm going to break down the 4 types of magic systems that I commonly see in speculative fiction as well as in gaming systems. And then I'm going to discuss how you mix and match those to build a magic system. And finally, I will address the 3 rules of the maestro of magic system building, Brandon Sanderson, and how they should be applied to building your magic system. Before we get into it, please do hit the subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow. And if you want me to comment on your magic system or just to take a look at it, just to share it for the sake of awesome, link it down below in the comments, and I promise you I will both take a look at it and leave you a comment. Okay, let's get cracking. Before we get into the actual mechanics around the 4 types of magic, I should probably say how I evaluate a magic system. So when I'm looking at a magic system, the first thing that I look at is the power source. What is the drive behind the magic system? What actually fuels it? Once I understand the power source, I then look at the effects that the magic have on the world. How is this power applied and what impacts does it have? And lastly, I take a look at the limits on the power, which is a very important component, but one that I like to look at in the end to see how the power is actually limited to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. Okay, so that's how I look at magic systems. Let's get on with the 4 types of magic systems. The first type is what I call power from the true source. Generally speaking, this is a magic system where your mage draws power from a single source of power. It's generally a single source of power, although it can sometimes be multiple sources. So the mage draws the power, they channel it through them, and then the effect that they want to happen happens in the world. Now, by the word channelers, you should know that one of the examples that I'm going to use here is Robert Jordan. So in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time world, channelers draw power from the one true source. They then make that power into threads which they use to affect reality. Now here's the big one. When those channelers try and take on too much power, they end up brain dead, right? And if you look at the other good example of this kind of system, which is Mercedes Lackey, you'll see the same kind of pattern. So in Mercedes Lackey, magic forms ley lines and nodes, and mages can draw from these, but only within their limits. So an apprentice can only use the ambient magic around him. A master can use ley lines. An adept can use a node. Now, if a mage tries and draws from a power source that is outside of their capabilities, the magic burns them up from the inside and you got it, they die. So the takeaway from these 2 examples is that you need strong limits with this kind of magic. And the reason why is because its advantage is almost its disadvantage as well. It's a very simple magic system. It's easy to work with. It's easy to expand on. You can have it do anything you want it to do. It's almost a soft magic system in its malleability. But that's also its downfall, because it is oh so easy to suddenly be in a situation where magic is your answer to everything and nothing else matters because I can snap my fingers and whatever I want to happen happens. So if you're going to build that kind of magic system, you really need to pay attention to limits. Limits matter with a one source of power magic system. And that leads us into sacrifice as your source of power magic system. So in this type of magic system, typically what happens is the mage sacrifices something, generally life, okay, to create the power that they need in order to cast the spell. Now, this is not component magic, which I'll talk about. This is actual blood sacrifice or life sacrifice. Now, the thing to bear in mind here is that your limit is literally built into your magic system, right? Because you can only cast magic as long as you can keep sacrificing things for it. So eventually you're going to run out, or people are going to kill you for killing too many of them. So you've got a built-in limit in this kind of system. The big downside of this kind of system is if your heroes are using it, it's very hard to make them sympathetic heroes. Somebody who runs around killing other people or even just killing animals to continually cast magic is not a very sympathetic hero. Your best bet, if that is your primary magic system and your hero has it, is to make them a magnificent bastard trope. Because sympathetic hero is not going to be them. Good examples, of course, if your villains use it, that's a whole different story, and I'll talk about that in my examples, because Catherine Kerr uses this in her Devery system, and they are villains who use it. It's the dark side of magic, but she goes even further than just a simple blood sacrifice. In her world, if you rape someone, you cause sexual energy to infuse their life energy. So if you then harvest the energies, you get double the bam for the single buck of sacrifice. So her villains who use this form of magic, man, do you hate them. Like, when those guys die, you're cheering all the way. A kind of good guyish example of this kind of magic is actually from George R.R. Martin. Danny killing the witch to birth the dragons is life sacrifice to engender the birth of dragons. Azor Ahai, his sword being quenched in his beloved's heart, creating the sword that vanquished the darkness, is a great example of a kind of heroic act to vanquish the badness that gives you a sort of a magnificent bastard trope of a hero, but definitely not a sympathetic hero. And that sacrifice to fuel magic, I use it as well in my world. Song Sorcery, my primary form of magic, is a blood magic sacrifice. In role-playing games, there's an example that comes from Legend of the Five Rings, which is the Blood Speakers. And they sacrifice blood to the Dark Kami to supercharge their spells, which is also a good way for your villains to use it. Use the same magic as you've got, but supercharged because of the sacrifice. And that brings us to component magic. Now, component magic is kind of like sacrifice magic, except you're not sacrificing a person. Instead, you use a component to generate the power that you then use to affect the world. But the component doesn't just serve as a baseline that you absorb power from. It also influences what you can do in the world. And the absolute best example of component magic is Brandon Sanderson's Allomancy. And I like that so much that I made a short about it, which you can check out over here in the info card. And it'll tell you how Allomancy works in 1 minute. So do check that out. But basically, what happens is the mage consumes a metal, and based on that metal, they can then affect the world with magic. Another form of component magic comes to us from D&D. Most of us ignore it in gameplay, but spells do have components, and those components drive the magic. Now, the upside of components are they make for great storylines. Okay? What happens if people's components get removed? What happens if the components are impure and the mage becomes poisoned? What happens if the mage can't find any components? Are they now just useless? Can they somehow manufacture components? Can they substitute components? Can you figure out new components by combining components? So you've got a great deal of storylines that are very, very fun to explore. And you can use this, you can use the component-based magic with freedom because you have your limitation built into your component, right? Let's say, like, for example, allomancy, there's only so much metal you can carry with you. Like, you're not going to sit there with a mountain full of iron and, you know, keep casting all day long. So it comes with great limitations. A kind of consumer component-based magic is sort of in Harry Potter, except it's wands and they're not consumed, right? But the magic is driven by the item. But Harry Potter also has ritual magic in that the spells are rituals, which leads us into my fourth type of magic, which is ritual magic. Now, ritual magic is a recipe-based magic. Yeah? You follow the recipe of the magic and the effect that you're looking for happens. It can be that the recipe varies, right? So one mage doesn't use the same recipe as another mage. It's got the same structure, but not the same exact methodology. Ritual magic is one of the hardest to pull off and to do well, because for every effect that you want, you have to design the whole ritual, which can be kind of painful. It also means that, you know, new effects need new rituals, and you have to keep extensive notes on your rituals and what you're doing with them. The best example of this, by far, is Jim Butcher's Harry Dresden from the Dresden Files. So the spells are little spoken rituals that varies from mage to mage, but basically what those rituals do is they protect the mind of the mage from the power of the one source. He has alchemical rituals, which is the creation of potions, and I made a short about Harry making a love potion that you can check out over there in the info card, where he uses different components in this alchemical ritual to make potions. He has proper rituals where mages form like little covens and they do their ritual thing and combine their power. And then he has what is truly, truly amazing, what he calls cosmic vending machine magic. And that's basically when you use magic to summon an elemental force. So, for example, you want to interact with an old one from Cthulhu. You do the exact ritual. You cleanse yourself, you eat a ham sandwich, you pray to the old one, the cola drops out of the vending machine, and the world burns to a crisp in apocalypse. Yay, vending machine magic. So, that kind of ritual-based magic, your story is quite often driven by the ritual itself. Because what you're doing here is, how does the ritual work, right? How do you get everything you need for the ritual? What happens if you're interrupted during the ritual? You know, what goes wrong at that point? So your rituals become both your cost and your tension-grabbing device in using your magic. So they can be a lot of fun. So those are your four types of magic systems. You have your one source, your sacrifice magic, your component-driven magic, and your ritual magic. Okay, but you don't have to be restricted to just one. Like a good wardrobe, you can mix and match these things. So maybe you've got a one source magic, but your one source magic can only be used by people who are 1,000 years old and of the elvish race. And other people have to channel the one source magic through items like wands. Or maybe you have component-driven magic, but you can overcome the need for components by substituting it through life sacrifice. And so you can mix and match and combine your magic systems to form a layered, complex magic system that will really draw your readers in. And then finally, let's talk about those 3 rules of Brandon Sanderson's. Rule number 1. An author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to the reader's understanding of the magic in their world. Okay, What does that mean? It means that you shouldn't have poorly explained magic. You shouldn't have solutions just bam, pop up. Yeah? And the example that I always turn to when I think about people who violate this rule is Vision in Age of Ultron. So I was watching that movie and I was like, man, I don't see how they're going to win this fight. Okay, this is ridiculous. This thing has no weaknesses. Everything they do, it's ahead of them. How are they going to do this? And then a minute later, Vision pops up on the screen, picks up Thor's hammer, and yippee! Let's go kill the bad robot. I was unhappy. Let's say I was unhappy. Vision's sudden appearance made no sense to me, especially since they cut out the creation scene where he's actually like birthed by Thor in this pool of lightning. But even with that scene, it didn't make sense to me that Thor could suddenly do that. Where did this ability come from? Nothing in the movies leading up to this had given me the impression that Thor could do this. So Vision's popping up like that was just, it really, really broke me out of my belief in this world. So don't do that. Don't be the Deus Ex Machina guy. Make sure that your readers understand where your magic system is coming from and how it's being used to solve conflict. Okay. Rule number 2. Limitation is more important than power. What does that mean? It means that while the effects of your power might be cool, they're like a 5-minute payoff. Okay? Whereas the limitations on your power lasts all book long and creates the tension and the drama and the everything that's cool that your readers will remember around the magic. Now, an example that's done both well and badly is in David Eddings. In his series The Belgariad, he's got a magic system called the Will and the Word. And oh boy, okay, so the sorcerer draws in his will into himself. He speaks the word and whatever he wants happens. Like, I am not even joking. Whatever he wants happens. So, I mean, you can see how this is a problematic magic system, right? It's just too open-ended. There's no limits on power. But there is one rule. You're not allowed to uncreate anything. And in the 3rd book, there's actually somebody who does that. They uncreate something. And the effect of that is actually far more interesting than all of the magic that had gone before. So when you're building your magic system, don't do that. Don't make it limitless. Build in limitations. They are more important than the actual power output. Last rule number 3, expand before creating new. Okay. What does that mean? It means that you should reuse before you buy new. Recycle, recycle, recycle. Really do recycle, but actually on this topic, look at your magic system and consider whether you could expand it rather than building a new component when you have a new plot requirement. Go take a look, go work backwards, see what you can do to make it more rather than just creating new. And again, my example of this done badly is Vision. Instead of figuring out something within the Avengers team, within established characters whose powers we understand, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, here is your Deus Ex Machina device brought to you today to solve your problem with a bad robot. I cannot begin to tell you how much that movie irritated me. Now, I will say that I loved WandaVision. You know, Vision now, it's great. I'm really glad he's part of the MCU universe. But man, the way he was introduced felt so sloppy and so lazy. Don't be that world builder. Don't be sloppy and lazy. Expand. Make sure your people understand what you're doing. Make sure there are limits on your power. Last rule. Rule number 0. Almost said rule number 4. Rule number 0. If in doubt, err on the side of awesome. After seeing a lot more revision, it may be that I can make peace with the fact that 2 of the 3 rules were broken in his introduction, because he is, in fact, awesome, and WandaVision was fantastic. So if it's going to be awesome, feel free to break all 3 rules. And that's my take on building magic systems. Please do comment down below with your magic system. I will take a look at it. Also, in the description is links to my website and my social media handles if you want to connect around world building. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It helps make sure that the algorithm doesn't bury it out back in a shallow grave. And I will see you next week for another episode of Just in Time World.